Hi everybody, welcome back to Slow Damage. Let's continue. The next day, I didn't work at the clinic, so I slept in until noon. I woke laying on my back on the sofa. I sat up, lit a cigarette, and took a drag. In the end, I never did find a hookup last night. Instead, I picked a random bar and had some drinks and went home. All in all, it was pretty tame, considering the previous night where I drank until I blacked out. Because of that, I felt lackluster. I took my time enjoying the cigarette, gazing at the TV that had been left on all night. Then suddenly a news chyron flashed up on screen. Takasota Gumi leader Takasata Ryujiro, 81, dead of heart failure. My eyes were locked on the white text. The leader of the Takasato Gumi was dead. But then the surprise faded. For the record, I had been informed that this man was my biological father. My mother was his mistress. In other words, I was his illegitimate son. And that said, I had next to no memory of being around him. Frankly, I could only vaguely remember what he looked like. So I didn't have much of an emotional response to this news of his passing. Just sort of, oh, he died. I looked away from the TV and leaned back against the sofa. Just then, I heard a muffled buzzing noise and realized the cell phone on the far edge of the sofa was ringing. I picked it up and looked at the screen. Sakaki was calling. I could also see the series of notifications that indicated he'd been calling for a while. He probably wanted to talk about my father, and if so, I wasn't interested. I dropped the phone back onto the sofa without answering it, cigarette dangling from my lips. I stared up at the ceiling. I had no real plans for today. Maybe I'd wander around downtown. With that thought, I took a long, deep drag. Exhaling smoke, I crushed my cigarette into the ashtray. Then I rose to my feet and pulled on my coat. Now then, where to? Let's see. Pardon the interruption. We will now briefly explain the exploration segments. Please bear with us for just a few moments. When an object pops up on screen, you know it's time for exploration. This time, the objective is go somewhere. During exploration, you're free to prowl the city of Shinkomi. You can go places, talk to people, and learn about the city. When you arrive at the correct destination, exploration will conclude and the story will progress. Whoop, dang it. It is very funky with the buttons. Or you can explore the city first before you continue. You're free to play however you see fit. To check your objective, move the cursor to the right-hand edge of the screen. In this case, the objective is go somewhere, so let's move this party somewhere else. Let's see. I do like the save look. Let's see, current location. Third, okay. The clinic Taku runs attracts a wide variety of local patients, young adults, young and old, plus night shift workers. A vast swath of high-rise condo buildings encircling District E. The majority of Shinkumi residents live in these Pencil Towers. Shopping district. Let's try the shopping district. This is Murasai Clinic. Taku started up 7 years ago. For a small, privately run facility, it has a good reputation that draws in patients not only from the neighborhood, but the downtown area as well. The doors open a bit later than most at 10 a.m., but in exchange, it stays open until 1 a.m., which is helpful for patients that work the night shift. In general, Shinkumi has a lot of hospitals. Most of them are either single rooms or large-scale facilities. So in that sense, a standalone building like Murasai Clinic is apparently rather unusual. Just then I sensed someone's gaze and I looked over. I thought I saw something slip into the shadows of a building. Or was my mind playing tricks on me? Must have you. If you encounter someone during exploration, try talking to them. Talking to them may give you inspiration. Let's try it out. When you select Talk, the hourglass and jagged line will appear. This is a simplified version of the interrogation, wherein you'll respond with negative or positive answers. For a refresher and interrogation, check the interrogation section of how to play. On the right-hand edge of the screen, you can see it says Euphoria Up. Unlike real interrogation segments, exploration chats show the results of negative and positive answers in advance. Euphoria Up means it will raise the euphoria gauge. And Euphoria Down means it'll lower the euphoria gauge. What should I do? Now, what should I do text at the bottom of the screen? If you choose to respond accordingly, you'll gain new inspiration. Some targets don't care which way you respond. Gaining inspiration is never guaranteed, so feel free to explore every inch of the city. Now let's try it out. Play along, wait and see.
Positive.
So what if I am? Oh, I guess he doesn't do voicing. Yeah, you're Toa. You're Toa, right? You're Toa, right? And the reason I know is because he knows, right? He who? I'm going to surpass him. Or my name isn't Inada. What? There's no inspiration to be gained this time around. Some exploration segments offer it, while others don't. You'll be able to tell the difference based on the objective. Red text means it's a special segment where no inspiration is available. But blue text means inspiration is out there somewhere, waiting to be found. You'll see blue text most often, red text is less common. But because this is a tutorial, it counts as special exploration. This concludes the exploration tutorial. Now you can get back to enjoying slow damage. Thank you. You're weird. I want nothing to do with you. I thought I was in the shopping district. You didn't let me go where I wanted to go. Tutorials. I mean, this might be the first one I've ever seen that has a tutorial. Or at least in a long time. This is the main street at the center of District E. For the most part, residents of District E pass through here to do their shopping. With all the diners, convenience stores, discount stores, and drugstores packed in like sardines, it's easy to find what you need. The streets are busy though, not as packed as District D, where everywhere you look, there's somebody working or people getting wasted. The traffic lights change and the crowd starts walking. But just then I spot a familiar face out of the corner of my eye. It was Ray carrying a paper bag in one hand.
Ara.
What are you doing here?
Yo.
Just wandering you. Oh, on my way back to Tojima's. She gave me a bunch of stuff, so I thought I'd share it with Taku. Again? It was a thank you gift for helping her. Oh, what's Octo? Oh, that reminds me, I left the croquette in the fridge for you. Did you eat it?
ポジティブに。ああ。
I ate a little.
え?
For real? Just a bite.
やった!
Still, that's a big step for you. I added condensed milk when I was making them. It's supposed to improve the consistency. Condensed milk and croquettes? It sounds crazy, but it works. You tasted it yourself, right? Again, I am not a dude, so none of them are going to sound like dudes when they don't have their normal voice actors. Well, yeah. Next time, I think I might try rice croquettes.
戻らなくちゃ。
All right. This is District E's residential area. If you live in Shinkumi, chances are high your apartment is in District E. District E is full of skyscrapers, all of them high-rise condo buildings. It's an attempt to make the most living spaces out of critically limited land area. The downdraft from all the skyscrapers creates strong winds in the area. Not to mention the majority of these buildings aren't up to code, so if we get hit by a major earthquake, they'll probably collapse. But the residents of District E choose to live here anyway. Someone concerned with safety wouldn't dare live in Shinkumi in the first place. Back over here and look around a bit more. I returned to my apartment. When I left, the TV was on, but now the familiar static drone was gone. Instead, I hear a faint rustling sound.
Oh, to.
Yeah. Welcome home. I was just tidying up in here. If I put it off too long, the whole place will turn into a pigsty. Why are you cleaning my apartment?
No.
Seeing as you're here, why don't you help me about a bit? The music really does remind me of Persona. He's gonna get pissed.
Negative.
You'd like that, wouldn't you? Figures.
それじゃあな。
Anyway, I'm out of here. Alright.
Hmm?
Tajima's. It's kind of explored everywhere. The one corner of the residential neighborhood sat a little old shop forgotten by time. It was a snack store called Tajima's, run for many years by an old octogenarian lady. In most cases, the expanding casino industry forced evictions on older homes and stores. But Tajima's fought eviction every step of the way, and now it was the last of its kind in the area. Fortunately, Tajima was popular with middle-aged folks looking for a nostalgic taste of their youth, plus it attracted younger people curious about traditional snacks. Every now and then, I'd stop by and grab some. I wasn't a big fan of junk food or anything, but for some reason the shop felt like home. I walked up and stood at the door and peered inside. The cramped interior was packed to the gills with sweets and snacks of every kind. Hidden among them was a white-haired, stony-faced woman standing as still as a statue.
いらっしゃい。
She sounded irritable. Reluctantly, I stepped inside. But though she may have looked angry, she was always like that. Hanging on the wall above the clutter was a painting with a layer of black over it. I kept wondering about it every time I came by. It was the one thing I didn't feel homey like the rest of the store. Maybe the owner just liked spooky stuff?
買うのかい買わないのかい
She snapped at me as I stood there without browsing. Her smoke was a deep, dark brown. Not once had I ever seen it waver. I grabbed some stuff at random and brought it up to the counter.
まったくこの町は日に日に変わっていってるよ。いつか本当に滅びてなくなっちまうんじゃないかとヒヤヒヤしてるんだよ私は。
She muttered to herself as she pecked away on her antique cash register. This old woman was one of the few who lived here since before Shinkumi became a casino resort, and she knew what it used to be like. She would always blather on and on regardless of whether anyone was listening, but some people found value in her stories of the old days.
昔はここまで汚らしい町じゃなかったのにね。それこそ純朴そうな小娘の面倒を見てやったりもしたのに。今は男も女もアバズレで溢れ返ってるよ。あんただってその一人なんだよ。わかってんのかい
Thanks, lady! Wait. Calling me a daughter or a slut? We need clarification, ma'am.
ああ
I nodded absently. Truth be told, I liked her. It felt like she was the only person still living in the old times while the whole world changed around her. Because of that, she was an outsider here.
毎日毎日誰が殺した殺されたで死体を見ても何とも思わなくなっちまってるんだ。狂ってるよ。ヤクザの言うこと聞くくらいなら私はこの店を守って死ぬよ。240円だ。
I pulled out a 1,000-yen bill out of my pants pocket and handed it to her.
釣りは取っといて。
いいのかい
ああ
毎度どうも。
She took the money without complaint. She handed me my items without a bag, and for the first time, I stopped to look at what I bought. Then I stuffed it all in my coat pockets and headed for the door. As I stepped outside, however, I realized the old lady had followed me out.
また来とくれよ。
She muttered under her breath with a scowl. I waved, then turned and set off down the street. She likes us. That's good. I like the old lady. That's a store I'd probably frequent, actually, if I lived there. We used to have a candy store around here, but dang if the prices aren't insane. Late that night, Taku, Ray, and I paid a visit to the local diner. Taku had promised to buy Ray a parfait, and tonight it was the time for him to pony up. That said, the three of us usually ended up at this diner anyway, since it was still open when the clinic closed. I was downtown at the time, so they invited me over on the phone. Oh, it's nice. I love the art. When we sat down at our table, Taku ordered a Salisbury steak special. Ray got the steak fried rice and a parfait, and I got a coffee. While they ate their food, I slowly sipped my drink. This was pretty commonplace for me. And yet, every time it happened, like clockwork, Ray would tell me, it's not healthy and it's going to kill you one of these days. Oh, it sounds like my friends. I don't actually eat at restaurants. Sure enough, I could hear him grumbling about something. But the moment they put his parfait down on the table, his whole face lit up. Oh, that looks good.
ここのストロベリーミルクパフェ本当に美味しい。
I'm not gonna lie, I want to try that really badly. Is it me or Japanese games and anime make the food always look delicious? Like, I want to try that. He squeezed his eyes shut and squealed in delight.
毎度毎度そんなに喜んでもらえたら、作った人も作りがいがあるってもんだな。
Taku sipped his post-dinner coffee with a weary grin. He wasn't a big fan of sugary stuff, so he couldn't really relate.
毎度毎度喜ぶから、もっとたくさん美味しいスイーツ作ってって感じ。
Ray stirred his parfait with his spoon, a dreamy smile on his face. That only lasted until I put my cigarette between my lips and started to light it.
ちょっと、まだ食べてるんですけど。
うん。
うんじゃないわよ。
喫煙席だろ、ここ。
マナーってものがあるでしょ。タクだってもうやめたんだし、あんたもいい加減やめなさいよね。
What is this common decency you speak of?
吸ってた俺が言うのもなんだが、タバコは100害あって一理なしだぞ。
I ignored their complaints and lit my cigarette and took a drag. Instantly, Ray's smoke went from yellow to red, mingling with the cigarette smoke.
本当にもう、とわは酒とタバコばっかり。あんなにいい絵を描くのに、実態なんてこんなものよね。
Ray let out an exaggerated sigh. Sulking, he put his elbow on the table and his chin in his hand.
歴史上の有名な画家も変人が多いからな。ある中から異常な女好きまで様々だ。どこかしら変わってるから芸術面では突出してるってこともあるんだろ
う。なのかしらね。でも、そばにいたらすごい嫌よ。迷惑よ。今身をもって体感してるわ。
とわに関してはもう諦めろ。昔からこういうやつだ。
It was the harsh truth.
その割には可愛い趣味があるのよね。
A devilish grin crept up on Ray's face.
趣味？
部屋にずっと置いてあるウサギのぬいぐるみを興味ないとか言うくせに捨てないじゃない？実は好きなんでしょ。
You're gonna make him throw it away.
いや。
I did have a bunny plushie in my apartment, but I wasn't particularly attached to it. I just randomly spotted it at a store one time and wanted to buy it, so I did. I hadn't really touched it or thought about it since, and now it sat collecting dust in the corner.
夜はこっそり抱いて寝てたりするんじゃないのか？
やだ、とあったらそんな可愛いところあるの？
As Taku teased me, Ray joined in. Ignoring their idiocy, I turned away and took another slow drag of my cigarette.
そういえば、今日はデスマッチには行かないのか？
今日はお休み。チームメンバーの都合もあるからね。
そうか。
The Deathmatch area was a special section of town located in District A at the center of Shinakumi. It was once ground zero for a lot of Takasato Gumi infighting. As a result, the whole district was torn apart, and residents were barred entry. Naturally, this attracted a lot of seedy types. Eventually, it became known as a place for fistfights, and people started using it as a battlefield to test their strength. Nowadays, anyone who wanted to fight could meet up in District A to take part in what was now referred to as a death match. Of course, the Takasato Gumi had noticed this, but they chose not to interfere. Here in Shinkumi, plenty of people were frustrated with the tyranny of the Takasato Gumi, not to mention the struggles of living in poverty. So the Takasato Gumi let them have their death matches in District A if it meant they could vent their stress. Their one restriction, they would hassle anyone who tried to live there or start a business there. Other than that, the Takasato Gumi didn't get involved. Believe it or not, taking part in death matches was something of a hobby for Ray. He always went with his buddy from Roosts. Supposedly, they were actually among the top contenders, but death matches weren't my thing, so I didn't know if it was the truth. Judging by their looks, you wouldn't think they were seasoned fighters, except for the rare occasions they turned up sporting cuts and bruises.
楽しんでやってるなら構わんが、あんまり羽目を外すなよ。最近じゃ、デスマッチも昔より悪質な奴らがうろついてるらしいじゃないか。
まあね。でも、そういう奴らもまとめて吹っ飛ばすのが楽しいのよ。スカッとするわ。
そうか。ま、しばらくは高里組も荒れるだろうから、お前たちも気をつけろよ。上の連中はともかく、チンピラどもがトラブルを起こすかもしれん。
そうなったら、拳で鎮圧しちゃうから大丈夫。
To prove his point, Ray flashed up his fist. Taku grinned wearily.
拳を振るうのはデスマッチだけにしとけよ。
もちろん。パフェおごってもらったし、言うこと聞きます。美味しかった。ありがとう。大満足。
In a blink, Ray had polished off his parfait. He set down his spoon with a satisfied smile.
それじゃ、明日もあるし帰るか。
そうね。また明日。とは、ちゃんと寝なさいよ。このまま飲みに行ったり、男を引っ掛けに行ったりしちゃダメだからね。
You can't tell me what to do.
うん。
With a non-committal response, I crushed my cigarette in the ashtray. Taku rose to his feet, grabbed the check, and then took it over to the register.
ごちそうさま。
Right as Ray got up, he suddenly turned back to me.
あら、そういえばあんたもおごりなの？
I just had coffee, dude.
コーヒーしか飲んでないからな。
Whenever we went out to eat, Taku would always pay for my order. Whoops. Ray donned a non-dramatical frown and glanced at me out of the corner of my eye.
なんかあんたって周りから妙に甘やかされてるわよね。ふらふらしてて危なっかしいからかしら。
Dude, it
野良猫みたいな感じ？
was a coffee. Calm down.
さあな。
I shrugged, and together we headed out for the exit. He pissy at us. The next day. I wasn't scheduled for work at the clinic, so I woke up around noon. Taku came up to my room on his break and invited me out to lunch. Ray wasn't scheduled to work until later in the afternoon, so he wasn't around yet. I got dressed and accompanied Taku out of the building.
お待たせしました。
The manager set down 2 mugs of coffee and followed by 2 plates of their famous honey toast. Once everything we ordered was on the table, he bowed quietly and headed back into the kitchen. In these parts, Yanagawa Cafe was a popular lunch spot. The place first opened over 20 years ago, and the building's retro, read outdated, style offered to its own special charm. It was about 5 minutes walk from Murasei Clinic, so I often found myself here. It all started when I was walking by one day and saw a dimly lit interior through the front window. It caught my interest, so I went in, and the rest is history. The cafe always played jazz music over the speakers, and the customers were relaxed. Their prices were relatively high, but seeing as they were still in business, they clearly had enough regular customers to keep them afloat. Coffee's biggest selling point? Freshly ground coffee and honey toast. Even Taku liked their toast, and he was notoriously uninterested in sweets.
さ、食べるか。いただきます。
He pressed his hands together to say grace, then picked up his knife and fork and started cutting up his toast. I crushed my lit cigarette in the ashtray and took a sip of my coffee.
ここのは本当にうまいよな。
甘いの苦手でも、この店のは平気なんだろ。
なあ、この蜂蜜の自然な甘さとパンの焼き加減が、ガキの頃によく食べたパンケーキに似ててな。って、お前こそ、普段はほとんど食べないくせに、ここのハニートーストは食べるよな。
ま、なんとなく。
なんだそりゃ。
Laughing, Taku slid the forkful of toast into his mouth. In a blink, he had somehow already eaten half the damn thing. Only then did I finally pick up my own knife and fork and start eating.
でさ、もうすっごいやつがいたらしくてさ。
なんだよ、すっごいって。何がすごいんだよ。
As we were busy eating, the conversation from the table next to us carried over, filling the silence.
すごいっつったらすごいんだよ。強いんだって。すごい強かったらしいんだよ。
そりゃ、高里組って、デスマッチの参加者で強いやつを引っ張ってきてるんでしょ。強くて当然だろう。
For a fraction of a second, Taku fell still.
いや、もっとだよ。もっと強えの。
もっと？
真顔で何人も殴って沈めてくくらいの、そういうマジでヤバいやつだったらしくて、どうも組を裏切ったらしいんだよ。
マジで？
そう。で、兄貴を殺して逃げたって。
兄貴？兄ちゃんってこと？
ちげえよ。あれだよ、ほら、杯がうんたらかんたらって、そういう兄貴。
なあ、そういう兄貴。でもさ、それってすごい不義理ってやつじゃね？やばいんじゃねえの？
やばいよ。だから組の奴らに制裁されて、もうこの世にいないって話だけどな。
制裁。おっかねえ。高里組なら人の一人や二人くらい簡単に消せるだろうしな。
Taku finished eating his honey toast in silence, but his expression looked stiff. Probably due to the subject matter. In this town, you couldn't walk 2 steps without hearing someone gossiping about the Takasato Gumi. Some of it was true and a lot of it wasn't. But like a game of telephone, a lot of details got lost along the way, so only a small fraction knew the facts. The guys next to us were just recounting stuff they'd heard from elsewhere. Almost every rumor was tarnished with embellishment born of speculation or assumption, and this time was no different. It wasn't easy to discover the unvarnished truth buried beneath. For example, I would never know the real Taku and he would never know the real me. Just because we'd known each other for years didn't mean we understood everything about each other. Then the subject changed to something else, and a few minutes later the 2 guys left to paying their bill. Once they were gone, Taku finally broke his bitter silence.
大人気だな、高里組は。
I ate my cold toast without responding. As it happened, I knew the guy they were gossiping about. A lot about him, in fact. Believe it or not, that fight happened while I was still in the gang. But I didn't want to remember him, so I actively avoided thinking about his name or face.
他に話したくなるような楽しいことがないんだろ。
I shrugged and Taku nodded slightly, still grimacing.
そうかもな。
Meanwhile, unpleasant memories rose to mind. I first joined the Takasato Gumi back when my mother died. When I was in middle school, she died in an accident. Then a yakuza named Sakaki came and told me she was his gang leader's mistress. There I learned that his name was Takasato Ryujiro, and he was my father. As a kid, I only knew Sakaki as a good friend of my mother's. I never knew he was in the gang. After her death, he tried his best to look out for me. The one thing led to another, and I joined the Takasato Gumi. No real reason, he invited me to join, so I figured I would. To him, my mother was a dear friend, and he would always reminisce about her. Because of that, he didn't feel like some Yakuza thug. He felt like family. As for my actual family, I couldn't remember much of them, or anything that happened prior to my mother's death. I vaguely recalled that I had a little sister, but I couldn't remember what she looked like. At the time, my mother's accident, I was injured and sent to the hospital. Maybe that had something to do with it? I stroked the eye patch over my right eye. There was no point in looking back. It was all in the past. Even without my childhood memories, I was still right here, living and breathing. I looked down at the table. Taku had stabbed his fork into my cold, half-eaten honey toast. Then, without batting an eye, he dragged it over to his plate.
食べるのか？
お前どうせ残すだろ。
He made it sound like he was entitled to eat my leftovers. He had a point, though. I wasn't planning to eat the rest, but still. I laid my knife and fork to rest. Then I lit a cigarette, took the longest possible drag, and blew it all back at him.
おい、やめろ。せっかく禁煙成功したってのに。
Grimacing, Taku waved a hand in front of his face.
本当に成功したかどうか試してるんだよ。
今やるな、今。食事中だぞ。
I fixed him with an impish grin. Scowling, he went back to the rest of his honey toast. As he wolfed down a few more bites, I smirked at him.
なんだ？
よく食うなと思って。
お前が小食すぎるんだよ。
He wiped his mouth roughly with a napkin and rose from the table.
ほら、行くぞ。
He grabbed the check and headed over to the register to pay. I crushed my cigarette in the ashtray, then followed after him. After we left the cafe, I parted ways with Taku. I wandered around town for a while, then once the sun set, I headed to the park. The place was deserted on a winter's night, and the white glow of the street lamps made it look even more desolate. I sat down on the chilly metal bench and lit another cigarette. I wasn't ready to go home yet, so I was trying to kill time. As I watched the pale smoke float up into the dark sky, I heard a commotion in the distance. Several pairs of footsteps were approaching, and when they passed under the street lamp, I recognized them instantly.
ほら、やっぱりトワだ。
おお、ほんとだ。
Oh my god, it's Final Fantasy characters! Run!
トワさん。
And a slut, apparently. Kotaro, Mayu, and Eiji were three guys I knew very well. They walked right up there to me.
お前、よく見えるよな。真っ暗なのにあんな遠くから。
目めっちゃいいの俺。超くっきりはっきり見えるよ。
アニメばっか見てるのに謎だよその視力。
むしろアニメで鍛えられてるのよ。
つうかとは何やったんだこんなとこで。
He looks like a Final Fantasy character. I'm not even joking. Tanned, muscular Kotaro bent over to get a good look at my face. You could say he had a wild side, or a short temper, depending on how you look at it.
ぼんやりしちゃって。よからぬ妄想。でもしてた？
Mayu cackled around the lollipop in his mouth. He was the tallest and leanest of the three, and he dressed like he found his clothes in the dumpster.
景気づけに一発爆弾でもどうですか？目覚めますよ。
The guy in the beanie was Eiji. He was an expert at information gathering and bomb assembly. Using the power of social media, he had a vast information network that he used to collect all kinds of intel. I had slept with Kotaro and Mayu a couple of times out of boredom, but never Eiji. He told me he wasn't really into sex stuff. Kataro's smoke was red, Mayu's was fuchsia, and Aiji's was a blue-green color.
別に一服してただけ。
暇ってことか？ならデスマッチエリアに行かねえか？
With a grin, Kataru straightened up and jerked his chin in the direction of District A.
面倒だからパス。
言うと思ったとは絶対言うと思ったよ。
暇ならいいだろう。付き合えよ。元兄弟のよしみでよ。
お前と杯を交わした覚えはないな。
Kotaro, Mayu, and Eiji were all former guns for hire that got recruited to the Takasato Gumi. Kotaro and Mayu were scouted via death matches after they proved their fighting skills. As for Eiji, supposedly he got invited to join after he hacked the social media accounts and websites for one of the Takasato Gumi's businesses. Of course, there were no means of the only people recruited this way. In fact, I heard of people taking part in death matches specifically to try to get in with the gang.
杯って言えばよ。とは、親父の葬式に来なかっただろ。
Kataru smirked.
行くわけない。
今日の昼に葬式があって、昨日は通夜だったんだよ。
へえ。
全然興味なしって感じですね。
うん。
I sincerely didn't. What did it matter to me if some total stranger kicked the bucket?
いや。それよりデスマッチエリアだ。行こうぜ。
行ってみたら意外と楽しいかもよ。
ないな。
もういっそのこと全部爆弾で吹き飛ばすってのはどうです？そしたら一瞬でみんな楽しくなりますよ。
What is this guy is weird.
何がだよバカ。
Kataru snorted and flicked Aiji's forehead.
ごたくはいいから行こうぜとは。ほら立てよ。
He grabbed my arm and hauled me up against my will. Once he had his mind set on something, it was impossible to get him to change it. He kept a firm hold on me as we walked, like he was worried I was gonna bolt.
俺らは上からデスマッチに参加するなって言われてっからよ。なんもできねえ。が、お前は好きなだけ参加できるじゃねえか。羨ましいな、おい。元参加者として体がうずくぜ。
借金の取り立てで普段から好きなだけボコボコ殴ってるだろ。
それはお仕事だし、返さないアホが悪いね。
でもいつも楽しそうに追いかけ回してるじゃないですか、お二人とも。僕も怖くって怖くって。
嘘つけ。借金野郎の弱みやら個人情報やらかき集めるのお前の仕事だろうが。
はい、それはもちろん。新興味の情報なら任せてください。あと爆弾も。
Oh, we noticed the bombs part. Aiji donned a big cheesy smile and Kataru scoffed. Here in Shinkumi, as the poverty gap widened, many were burdened with large debts. Any debtor unable to make payments was mercilessly hounded by Takatsu goons. And if the debt reached a certain size, the debtor would get a chip known as a web tag implanted in them. Web tag debtors were then tracked via surveillance towers erected all over Shinkumi. They were forbidden to set foot outside the city until their debts were repaid. If they tried to leave, the Takasato Gumi would send pursuers to hunt them down and kill them, no questions asked. You might wonder how the gang got their money back if the debtor was dead, but corpses had plenty of monetary value.
ねえ、行くなら早く行こう。帰って録画しといたアニメ見たいんだよ。
Mayu was already looking away like he'd lost interest in the conversation.
うるせえな、このアニメオタク。
っていうか、あのスズメ、ポップコーン頬張りすぎね？欲張りすぎだよ。破裂しそう。
あ？どこだよ。見えないっつうの。お前の異常な視力で見えるもんは普通の人間には見えねえんだよ。
みんなも俺みたいにアニメ見ればいいのよ。アニメ見ようよ。
見ねえよ。
か。
I trapped in Kataro's tight grip and stuck in the middle of their inane banter, I left the park behind. District A, also known as the Deathmatch area, was a place forbidden to the average citizen. Not that they'd want to visit. Because no normal people ever come around, and nearly all the shops had closed their doors for good. The deeper you traveled into the district, the rougher, the dirtier the city became. The place was busiest at night, by some unspoken rule that was when everybody showed up. As the four of us walked to the heart of District A, the sound of scuffling and jeering grew louder.
おーおー、今日も派手にやってんな。
Kataru grinned. Here, unlike anywhere else, the air smelled of dust and copper. And unlikely anywhere else, everyone's smoke was full of chaotic energy. The countless colors shifted and blurred together like an aurora of rejected crayons.
平和平和。この間の見せしめが効いたね。
見せしめ？ああ、銃ぶっ放しまくってたやつか。まあ、吊るしといたからな。
銃は使用禁止になったのか？
Edgy shook his head in response to my question.
いえ、使用禁止という明確なルールは作ってません。相変わらず暗黙の了解状態ですよ。そのせいか、負けたことが悔しくてどうしても勝ちたい、復讐したいって新参者が銃を持ち込むことも増えてきてるんですけどね。
Technically, deathmatch rules permitted the use of weapons. However, weapons gave the armed fighters a huge advantage over the unarmed, so there was an implicit agreement among the participants not to bring any. Nevertheless, as Ichi said, some come armed regardless. These types were seen as cowards, and they were sometimes lynched as a warning to others.
この間吊るしたやつはリンチを止めに入った俺らにも銃を向けてきたからよ。そりゃぶん殴るよな。そうじゃなくても銃や武器が絡むと試合じゃなくて戦争が始まっちまう。
そういうアホを見つけたらボコって持ち込んだ武器と一緒に吊るしとくとね、それなりの効果があるんだよね。
もしデスマッチが戦争になったら、その矛先は必ず高里組に向きます。それじゃ信仰味がめちゃくちゃになっちゃいますから。どんなに混沌としているように見えてもバランスは大事ですからね。
みんなが平和に暮らすためってとこか。
As I listened, I thought to myself, what does peace even look like here in Shinkumi? Once you fell into the depths of hell, you wouldn't be climbing back out again. No, you'd have to make your peace down there. And our little rock-bottom society played by its own rules. I was merely a cog in the machine. But believe it or not, I kind of liked it down here. Nothing worth caring about, nothing that could tie me down. In that sense, yeah, it was peaceful. A nearby ring of onlookers started to cheer, and I looked over. A rainbow of smoke blurred together, flailing wildly. But I watched it all with cold indifference. Is he gonna fight? Is he gonna fight? Nope. After I left the deathmatch area, I was sitting in a random bar getting drunk when my phone buzzed. There was a new message in the group chat between Ray, and Taku. Got a call about a critical patient. Come over ASAP. As it happened, I was thinking of going home anyway. Cigarette between my lips, I paid my tab and walked out. Someone get shot? A few minutes after I arrived back at the clinic, Ray showed up. patient was gravely injured, but there was no ordinary patient. A group of men, possibly the guy's buddies, carried him through the back entrance. His shirt was stained red with blood. All of them were flashy clothes with lots of accessories. These weren't innocent civilians, these were Yakuza. Most of the many medical facilities in Shinkumi claimed to refuse service to gang members. In reality, a lot of them accepted those same patients behind closed doors, and this clinic was one of them. We were so often visited by Yakuza, you'd think Taku was one of them. Word on the street was he had earned the Takasato Gumi's trust. Sometimes he would suddenly close the clinic or change office hours just to accommodate these special patients. Out of respect for his civilian patients, he made the gang bring their wounded in through the back, but it was an open secret at this point. This didn't scare off any of his regular patients, however. Doctors as good as Taku were hard to find. Besides, the residents of Shinkumi accepted that these things came with the territory of living here.
服を脱がせますね。
With permission, Ray began to remove the patient's shirt as he lay on the exam table. The man was sweating bullets, gritting his teeth to endure the pain. Stripping him revealed a stab wound on his side covered in blood.
出血がひどいが、傷はそれほど深くなさそうだ。
Frowning, Taku examined the cut, then started patching him up. Ray and I assisted him as needed, following orders he gave them.
よし。
After he finished administering the first aid kit, Taku let out a long sigh. The patient had regained a lot of color in his complexion. Compared to when he first arrived, he seemed calmer now.
痛みはどうですか？もし辛いようなら休んでいった方が。いや、いい。
Grunting, the man tried to push himself into a sitting position. Taku held out a hand to stop him.
急に動かない方がいいですよ。
手当てが終わったら戻ってこいって上に言われてるんでね。
Ignoring Taku's request, the man sat up, regardless. Then, clutching his bandaged side, he slowly hopped down off the exam table.
世話になった。すまねえ。
Taku didn't bother trying to stop him. He knew precisely what kind of world this man lived in. The man snatched up his neatly folded shirt and started walking, pressing his hand against the wall for support. He left accompanied by his associates.
見送ってくるわ。
Ray hurried after them. They would be leaving through the back, the same way they came in. The man's medical expenses would be billed to the Takasato Gumi directly. As Taku and I tidied up the medical equipment, Ray came back into the exam room and let out a giant sigh.
はあ、ほんと嫌になっちゃう。
仕方がない。無理に引き止めることもできないからな。
もちろん分かってはいるんだけどね。あんな状態で返すのって本人の意思だから仕方がないんだけど。
患者が望まないのであれば俺たちができることは何もない。
うん、そうなのよね。
Ray nodded to himself sadly, his eyes were on the floor. This sort of thing didn't happen every single day, but it was still fairly frequent. Judging from the stab wounds, the patient probably got embroiled in some sort of fight. But Yakuza weren't the only ones who had to worry about physical danger. Everywhere you looked, the city was dripping with death and violence, the product of pent-up rage that no one knew how to ally. By this point, the line between Yakuza and civilian had blurred beyond recognition.
あとはもう大丈夫かしら。
ああ、来てくれて助かったよ。急に呼び出してすまなかったな。
いいのよ、気にしないで。
あと、明日の炊き出しよろしくな。
はーい。
炊き出し？
The unusual phrase gave me pause, but Taku rolled his eyes.
先週から言ってただろう。忘れたのか？路上生活者や仕事が見つからない人たちを支援するボランティアのイベントだよ。
Come to think of it, I vaguely remembered that conversation. Stuff I didn't care about generally wasn't priority to me.
よろしく頼むな。あとは俺がやるから帰っていいぞ。
At his prompting, Ray and I left the room.
あ、とは
Right as I was about to head up to my apartment, Ray stopped me.
最近絵の方はどうなの？誰かいいモデルは見つかった？
いや、今のところは。
I shook my head. Ray was referring to my article on the Fourth Face, Roos Company's blog recruiting potential art models. Outside of being an all-around degenerate, art was my sole hobby, specifically oil painting. Ray liked my work a lot. When he showed his boss at Roost, the guy decided he wanted to display all my new pieces in his establishment. That said, I couldn't paint a thing without a model, and not just any model. One who met my specific requirements. The manager of Roost liked to appraise and collect art paintings as a hobby, and he wrote about all sorts of artists on the company blog, both professional and amateur. He also invited artists to send in photos of their submissions, which he would post on the site. And if he really liked a piece, he would display it in the bar. Periodically, articles would go up seeking models for my work. My artist ally was Euphoria, chosen for me by Ray. I didn't care too much, but apparently Euphoria had a unique style that attracted a considerable cult following. So whenever my model request went up, I'd always get a handful of responses. It was more of a steady trickle than a torrent, so I only checked my inbox whenever I felt like it. It didn't matter how interested the model was. If I wasn't interested in them, I couldn't paint them. And lately, I wasn't interested in any of the people who emailed me.
早く新作書いてよね。一ファンとして楽しみにしてるんだから。それじゃ、おやすみ。
With a playful wink, he strode off into the staff room, humming a jaunty tune as he went. As for me, I took the elevator to the third floor and went back to my apartment. Then I switched on the TV, flopped onto the sofa, and grabbed my half-finished bottle of booze on the floor. After the lukewarm alcohol flowed down my throat, I grabbed the pack of cigarettes on the coffee table and lit one. Gazing up at the faintly illumination of the flickering TV on the ceiling, I slowly exhaled the smoke. According to the clock on the wall, it was nearly 3 a.m. But still, I wasn't sleepy, so I just took another drag of my cigarette and contemplated popping some sleeping pills. So this is probably where we're going to leave it. We'll load in the next area. That's where we're going to leave it. So, thank you guys for joining me for the next episode of this game. If you're watching this elsewhere from YouTube, please check me out on YouTube under Purity Sin Gaming and Simply Pure. And I'll see you guys next time. If you're on YouTube, there's lots of fun links in the description. Bye guys! Have a fantastic day.